What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Tifa in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So I promised these kind of character pieces, and what I basically want to do is just go through my opinion of Tifa, some of the highlight moments, of her in Rebirth, and go from there. Last week, we talked about Barrett. I've done, obviously, a bunch of separate theories and things like that, but I've done one on Barrett. This one will be on Tifa, and I still want to talk about the Aeriths and Clouds of the world. But Tifa is such an amazing character, and I'll tell you from my own personal, opinion of her, right, what I thought of her going in, Aerith was kind of my favorite, and I gotta be real, I didn't really know where I felt about Tifa. I definitely liked her, right? I think Britt Baron does a phenomenal job voicing her, and I think she's a lovable character, and I think she's a really good character in Remake, but I kind of preferred Aerith, right? So going into Rebirth, I was like, all right, I don't know, when I go on the Golden Saucer date, who am I going to choose? I think I'm going to choose Aerith. I'll tell you, I feel like I kind of evolved as this game evolved, before my eyes, right, when playing it. Because as the game kept going, and actually it starts very good with Tifa and Cloud, right? But as the game goes, I'm like, you know what? Tifa is maybe my favorite character. Now, Aerith really starts to steal the show, and you might be able to say that the game was kind of Aerith's game, maybe overall, as the game went on. But for a lot of it, I would say Tifa was very, very important. She was a phenomenal character from start, and I mean start, right? Because the first couple scenes you get of her, when you really start to get, in depth with it, we start this Sephiroth kind of mind game with Cloud, right? Where it's like, hey, I'm going to go after your relationship with Tifa because I know how important Tifa is. And, if I can break that trust, that relationship, this is going to be a win for me, right? And that starts so quick. But I would say this relationship that Tifa has with others, and we've talked about this before, right? One of the main strengths of Rebirth is the characters and their interaction with each other. So what's funny about it is Tifa on her own, I think, is a great character, but it's really her interaction with other people that I think elevate her character. So her and Cloud are just so freaking lovable, honestly. And, to my earlier point, maybe I should finish that kind of thread. Going in, it was Cloud and Aerith to me. And again, they have their moments. They have a date, right? And then actually, technically, they have a second date in the dream, quote-unquote, world. And obviously, the ending, again, is very, very heavily Aerith. But that's what I was going in thinking and going in kind of wanting. Well, as the game went on, I fell in love with Tifa just as a character and just how strong she is, determined, but also, she's going through things, what she means, and how she can help other people, primarily Cloud, right, which we'll talk about in this video. She was so good that by the time it became, okay, well, if I'm going to game this, if I'm going to figure out who I'm going to go on a date with, right, as Cloud, it actually became Tifa. It was the first part of the date, right, where they open the door and you're there and you almost go on, the Ferris wheel. That was Tifa. And then the final date was actually Tifa, which I believe canonically is the right choice. I don't know if that's a controversial thing to say, but I feel, and this actually is how I feel, and I think this actually works well, Tifa and Cloud have this thread throughout the entire game that I think is really, really beautiful, right? They have defined cutscenes, defined moments where there's a lot of almost lack of trust. Things are breaking down. Their emotions for each other are tested. And in fact, when they talked about these characters behind the scenes, right, I believe Britt Baron even talked about these kind of things. They went through the ringer in this game. This was not, I don't know, Remake has stakes, but definitely Rebirth has them more. And their relationship is put to the test. And there's questions that were never posed in Remake, now in Rebirth. So they went through it. And I feel again, you start the game and Tifa and Cloud are well, Cloud doesn't even trust her, right? And Tifa feels pretty hurt by that overall, right? So that kind of cements this beginning where it's you can't exactly rebound from that. Then she tells Aerith, hey, do you know what's going on with him? Because he was not at Nibelheim, right? That entire arc. So it starts there. But as the game goes, after Cloud has this freak-out session and almost freaking murders Tifa, right? She goes into live stream, and that's obviously going to be very, very important for her character going forward, but that was a great little arc. And then I would say the more important part was right after that, right? She wakes up, and her talk with Cloud, and that actually is kind of driven by Cloud as well. But this thread of these characters where they start, where the relationship is kind of immediately tested, they kind of reconcile and get through it, and Cloud tries to walk her through what he's dealing with and what he feels and all that stuff, and she comes back to him in that moment, right, and says, hey, like, you saved me, and here's what you did for me, back in the past, and I'm going to do it for you. Like, you can rely on me. And I thought that was just a very beautiful cut scene, Yuffie at the door, saying kiss, kiss. Like, that was so, they have a nice blend of comedy or humor or like lightness while also being kind of serious, right? Because they are working through the relationship, but then there's kind of that levity to it. And then so, like I was saying with the Golden Saucer, I feel like it's a good ending to that thread because there's a lot of struggle and then kind of a little reconciliation, then like a big struggle, right, where he almost kills her and he flat out doesn't believe her and his mind is just too clouded, right? You have that. Then you have, okay, here's what he's dealing with, and Tifa, promises you're going to make it through it. You're not going to degrade and all that stuff. I'm going to be there. And then you have the Golden Saucer date where it really felt rather natural that these two people would be together. They're childhood friends, and, it seems like Tifa has definitely, I think both of them, right, have always liked each other. Tifa has definitely been more open about it, but I don't know. I think it's just like, I don't know if it's weird to say it's such like a cute kind of relationship, but I really honestly love it where it's like she's very willing to be a little bit more outgoing, right? Like she's got a couple faces she makes, she's got a couple like gestures, and she's a little bit more willing to kind of give, whereas Cloud is more reserved, right? So I really think those two play off each other really well, and I think that was also kind of discussed in the behind the scenes thing. Cloud opens up differently to each of them, right? His personality around Aerith is actually quite different than how he acts around Tifa. Tifa, he's almost like more embarrassed, more like inward, right? But he does really care, and I think he does really love her, but I don't know, sometimes he kind of refuses to let it out, right? But Tifa really is that defined force throughout this game, and I think she was kind of considered more or talked about, again, in the behind the scenes more as like this mother figure, right? Compared to like an Aerith or a Yuffie. She always has their backs and she's always there, but she's almost like, maybe not even the mother figure, but definitely like a bigger sister type thing, right? Like she's there to protect them, and she just kind of feels like she's like in control of things, like she's in control of her own stuff more than others, although she's also dealing with stuff, right? And it started in Remake and it continues in Rebirth where she's struggling to figure out where's that fine line between, we have to do what's right and we can't hurt people, or we don't want to, hurt too many people. We got to be aware of that. But also like we have a task to do, and like there's a clear directive or there's a clear path ahead. She seemingly struggles with that, but she kind of keeps that stuff in, and she is more of that, again, I don't know if you want to call it a mother figure or big sister figure, but that kind of protector role to everybody else. Now, her and Barrett's relationship was pretty, I would say, clearly defined even in Remake, and I think it was continued here. And, Barrett actually talks about how much that Tifa means to him, right? But you also have Aerith, and this is a big kind of part to this I want to talk about, and then I guess her dad, right? That's another big element. So her relationship with Aerith was something that I never really got too much of in Remake, and it's funny that the whole talk now, on Twitter and social media of, some of the more executives, at Square Enix talking about, hey, when this was originally happening back in 7, people would come up to them and say, or at least one person, right, and said, like, do they not like each other? Like, they don't really get along, and that was never the goal, right? They actually were always kind of friendly, and they said, like, that was a big thing they wanted to stress in this game. They nailed it perfectly, like 10 out of 10. Aerith and Tifa's relationship is so much fun, and it really comes back to hurt. We are going to go into spoilers here as well. It really comes back to hurt at the end because they really build these two up, and I would say they primarily build these two up in this game. There's a little bit done for sure in Remake towards like the second half, but for this, I mean, like the high fives they give each other, right? And talking about boys, right? Talking like shop. And it's just so nice to see. Like, and I think they just do it really well. I think the dynamic works really well between them. You have different personality types between, Aerith and Tifa. And then, again, now we're going to get into spoilers here, right? When Aerith dies, and I had said this, the thing that I think they messed up with the ending, and it's in my belief the only thing because I'm kind of a defender of it, I didn't really feel the impact of her death, right? Too many jumps, there was too much going on. I did a whole video on it, but the one moment that I really, like, my heart kind of sank and I really felt something was actually Tifa. And I would say even to an extent Barrett, right? There's a couple scenes with Barrett towards the end, but when Tifa runs up, and she also sees both versions of Aerith alive and dead, and then at the end, or I guess after the boss fight, right? she goes over and, she puts her hand on, and actually she's pretty reluctant to even touch her, right? Almost like she doesn't want to accept that her best friend's gone, right? So she puts her hand on her and she's just kind of weeping, knelt over her. That is where I felt the most sad. And again, we've talked about what were they trying to do with making us, were they trying to make us feel more like Cloud at the end, because the emotional part didn't really come through. The emotional part did come through primarily through Tifa. Tifa is destroyed, and rightfully so, right? Like, she had a couple best friends, Jessie being one, and now she's gone, and then also, Aerith, and she got so close to Aerith. Again, there's a lot of just moments in this game of bonding, even just fun little like quirps back and forth, right? Like when you're just out in the field, out doing things. I actually always had Aerith and Tifa together. That was one of my party duos, was those two. So it was just always really fun to see them bounce back and forth. You think of Costa del Sol when they're both there. There's just a lot of great bonding moments. And, I mentioned Tifa and Cloud, like that's a huge one, but Tifa and Aerith are always kind of around each other as well. And they just give off this older sister, younger sister, I would say, type vibe, where Tifa is more of that protection role. And again, she maybe keeps things a little bit more inward, but she's looking to help people, or she's willing to help people, but kind of in a different way, right? Different way than Aerith. Aerith handles things, I would say, a little bit differently, but it works really well. So, losing Aerith, I think that was very impactful to Tifa, and I felt it too. And I would say that was mainly defined or brought forward because of her. If she didn't have that reaction, hey, that goes to the animators, right? That goes to the acting. Even at the very end, right, when she's sitting there and Aerith goes over to Red 13 and you can hear Tifa crying still, right? So I don't know, there's just so many moments in this game. When I think to a lot of the highlight moments, again, like a big arc in the first 50 or so percent. I mean, I think when Cloud almost kills her, right, and swipes at her, I think that was a little bit past the halfway point of the game. But quite a bit of this was the attempt for Sephiroth to have a divide between Cloud and Tifa. And I felt angry, like as a player, where it's like, don't you dare go after these two characters, right? And I think you only feel that. I only feel that because you like the characters and you like their dynamic. Even like a soapbox or all these kind of, television, movies, whatever, if you have this character that comes in to try to drive a wedge between two other characters, it's not going to impact you unless, number one, you like both characters, but number two, and maybe more importantly, you like the relationship of them together, right? If I didn't care about Cloud or Tifa, and I didn't care about their relationship with each other, Sephiroth trying to make Cloud turn on her doesn't really do much, right? So I think, again, that's a testament to Cloud. That's a testament to Tifa. I realized, and that's my biggest, I would say, like shining thing with Tifa in this game, and more of like my own very personal kind of opinion, I grew to love her as this game went on. And I love her as a character more now than I ever did a week before the game came out or when I was playing Remake, right? I think Tifa is such a phenomenal and deep character, and I can't freaking wait, to see what they do in the next game. But there's a lot of moments in this game that are defined by her or defined by her and Cloud, right? But obviously she's 50% of that. So I think they nailed it. And ultimately they made me really love her as a character. And I'll say this honestly, like, if Aerith didn't have those last 2 hours, which I think were so good, again, like I'm a defender of it, they were so good. She's got so many great lines, so much emotion there. If that didn't happen, and that's a big what if, because it did happen, but Tifa would have been my favorite character in the entire game. I think Cloud had a lot of depth, and again, I can't wait to make a video on him because I have a lot to say. Cloud became a much more, defined character that I really appreciated, but Tifa might have been my number one up until the end. I mean, Aerith was always around, right? Aerith was always like maybe number 2 or number 3, and then, those last 2 hours, I feel like right now, sitting here right now, if I were to do a top 3, Aerith is probably number 1, and then Tifa and Cloud kind of battle each other for number 2 on my own personal list, but it's very close, and this is a game that just has one, and I've said this before, one of the greatest ensemble casts of any game I've ever played. Cloud, Tifa, Aerith for sure, but Barrett, Kate Sith, Yuffie, I mean, every one of them are so good, hence why I want to make these kind of character videos. It's unbelievable how likable these characters are and how much you care about them and care about their relationship with each other, right? And again, Tifa, I would say, is easily a top 3. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.